Big Man U strikes again. Matt Painter has landed the highest ranked recruit in Purdue history.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, joined today by the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Nick Arvin, the great host of Locked On Boilermakers. And boy, it's an interesting offseason for Purdue, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to start with Purdue getting a commitment from Isaiah Hill, who's class not 26, 27, so he's a rising senior, but the highest ranked recruit in program history, at least in the 247 sports era in their database. But before we get there, we want to talk about the guys that will be coming to the program this season, both freshmen and from the transfer portal, although there's only one of those. And also we'll wrap things up today looking at, essentially, we're going to be moving into a new era of Purdue basketball. The links to the Zach Edey era are gone. We've just lost this three-man senior class. So my question to Nick, who now is the face of Purdue basketball outside of Matt Painter, of course? We're getting into all of that today. Nick, it's great to be together in the summer. Let's dive right in. Isaiah Hill over the weekend commits to Purdue. I know you've been talking about him a lot, so I'm just going to set it up, give you the floor. How big a deal is this for the Boilermakers?
It's gigantic for so many different reasons outside of just surface level bringing in a five-star guy. You look at kind of where this program is right now. You have Daniel Jacobson is presumed to be the starter, and we saw last year it was a little bit shaky on the back half of the season. But right now, as we look at it, the center position going into the future seems to be wide open. You said it, big man you. I like to call it 7-footer you, because that kind of seems like that kind of seems like that's who Matt Painter loves to bring in. And we get another one here with Isaiah Hill, the five-star out of Pike. Head coach right now is Jeff Teague, former NBA point guard over at Pike. So I like that connection there in terms of the basketball IQ. But this is going to be a guy, if you're watching this and you're a Purdue fan who just hasn't really kept up with recruiting, or if you're a non-Purdue fan who watches Isaac's stuff, Isaiah Hill, he's going to be great. Very, very physical. He's very athletic. That's going to be the thing that pops out when you talk about Isaiah Hill, is he can completely jump out of the building. In terms of athletes that are bigs within the 2027 recruiting class, I don't see any that are really on his level quite yet. Elite rim protector as we sit right now. He's going to be a younger guy, so doesn't turn 18 until I believe the August before his freshman year at Purdue. Yeah. And then also great in terms of he can be a lob threat, can finish those pretty well. The only spot, and I know I said he was physical, but the one spot where he can improve is just getting a little bit stronger inside the paint in terms of trying to get to his post moves inside. That could be a little bit of a work in progress for him. But like I said, he's still very young, has a lot of ways to go. The athleticism is why he is a top 10 guy, according to 24/7 Sports, and now passes up Caleb Swanigan as the top recruit Matt Painter has ever brought in to West Lafayette. Huge for the 2027 recruiting class, huge for the way that Matt Painter is now being viewed as an elite recruiter.
And I mean, I love that you went there, Nick, because that was my next question is like, you know, you think about the whole Braden Smith story, and this is this guy that was ranked so far out everywhere, and they're like, holy cow. And I know that COVID probably played into that some, and he was misevaluated and things like that. Fine, whatever. But in your mind, and as you know, we're going to talk about the 26 class here in a minute, but there's some higher ranked recruits in terms of Purdue standards in that class as well. In your mind, like, does this signal a change in Matt Painter's recruiting style or philosophy, or is it just like, no, this is just who we're going to get sometimes?
I mean, I think so, absolutely. And it had to happen because with the changing landscape of college basketball right now, we see the transfer portal that just half a decade ago wasn't what it was now. You see NIL that's all over the place right now. Something was going to have to change with Matt Painter's program. You're not necessarily going to survive. And I want to get this out front and forward. Matt Painter will always be an elite developer, talent developer, and he will be elite at retaining talent, no matter who that is, whether they're a 3-star like a Braden Smith or whether they're now a 5-star like Isaiah Hill. But that's what Matt Painter brings in. But when you see guys going into the transfer portal, like our neighbors over in Bloomington, who have a number 4 ranked transfer portal class, you're going to have to go a different direction if Matt Painter isn't going to be a coach that elects to use that transfer portal very heavily. And that hasn't necessarily been his MO. So I feel like what we've seen is kind of a shift from bringing in these guys that are in state that Matt Painter does believe he can turn into great prospects like a Trey Kaufman-Wren, like a Braden Smith, but maybe a little bit lower within those recruiting rankings, to now going after guys that are going to be higher. Number 8 recruiting class in the nation in 2026. And then you go and get the number 1 player in the state of Indiana and go right back and get a 5-star with a top 10 guy in 2027. So I feel like there has been a little bit of a shift in Matt Painter's mentality or strategy in terms of recruiting, because now that the transfer portal is being utilized so heavy, there is room for Painter to go in and snag some of those top guys. But the one thing I want to mention that may or may not be talked about in this episode, I don't want to jump the gun and talk about 2026, but it's Luke Ertel, number 1 player in the state.
Yes. And Nick, let me stop you, because that's exactly where I want to go.
Okay.
The top of the next segment. So let's pause on him. And I just want to ask you a few other things about Isaiah and the whole get with it is, one of the things that's interesting, like we're seeing it in the portal this offseason, is a skilled, talented big man like this, who's not just a big man, but somebody that is actually good at basketball. And I know that's a weird thing to say, right? Like, there aren't many of them. The supply and demand for this type of big is huge. And so, of course, when you are big man you, or as you said, 7-footer you, and you're able to continually keep getting these guys, it just feels like that's going to always put Purdue and Matt Painter at an advantage, because you get a guy like this as the first player in this class for you, and then you can build around him as you start to build it all out, Nick. And so in your mind, how important is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why the center position, the 5 spot, is going for more in terms of NIL money in the transfer portal than anyone else, because that's the most rare position to get a guy that's going to be a stud. And remember when people said that Zach Edey was just tall, that was the only reason he was successful? Well, I thought that was idiotic at the time, but you look at a guy like Isaiah Hill, or kind of the guys they're bringing in now. Yes, I think it's idiotic, but you look at Isaiah Hill, and he's just such a different prospect compared to what Zach Edey was, where, yes, he's tall as well. Yes, he's going to be able to develop, maybe not the post moves that Zach Edey was able to put up at his time in Purdue, but the athletic ability, his ability to jump, to get up in the air, it's just so much different. So it's so exciting to see the same quality of guy and to do the same things, where you're bringing in these 7-footers where you can build a team around, like Purdue did with Zach Edey. Hopefully Matt Painter is able to find a similar level of success with a guy in Isaiah Hill he was able to find in Zach Edey. But I think it's such an important part of roster construction right now, especially, once again, if Matt Painter isn't going to go after these guys in the transfer portal or fetch the money that it's going to take to get one of these top transfer portal centers. It's so crucial that you bring in top-rated centers. And we see that now. You bring in Daniel Jacobson, who still has a lot of work to go. But you got Sinan Juan in this 2026 class. I'm sure we'll talk about him. Now Isaiah Hill, the center spot is solidified going into the future. And I think that's absolutely huge for Purdue fans as we get into this next era of Purdue basketball.
I love it. Very excited to see if Matt Painter can continue that roster building concept that he's used, where it's not tapping into the transfer portal much, and continued development. Hopefully these guys will stick around. That'll be a lot of fun. Also, by the way, I guess we haven't said, but Purdue beat out Louisville to get Isaiah Hill. And so with all the haul that Louisville has had this offseason, my goodness, similar to what they did last year, always nice for a team in a close proximity to be able to not allow Louisville to go get that. So Isaiah Hill, rising senior, will be at Purdue, not this upcoming season, but the year after. However, while he's a year away, Nick started to name a couple of these dudes who are coming right now to West Lafayette. And boy, this 26 class is loaded We'll look at this class plus the one transfer that's incoming to West Lafayette. All coming up here in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, the NBA playoffs are here and every possession matters. If you're looking to get even closer to the action, FanDuel has a great offer to get you started because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. That's right. Turn $5 into $150 just for getting started. I like using FanDuel during the playoffs because everything you need is right there in one place. Their app is easy to navigate and makes playoff basketball even more engaging from start to finish. It's got a lot of detailed insight that can help you make more informed decisions. Thinking ahead to the NBA draft, which is coming up in about a little over a month here, the odds for the first pick of that NBA draft are live right now at FanDuel. You got AJ DeBonsa from BYU favored at -300, followed by Darren Peterson of Kansas plus 250, Cam Boozer from Duke at plus 1100, Caleb Wilson plus 3,500 from North Carolina. It falls off a cliff after that all the way to Darius Acuff at plus 20,000. That's crazy. So if you want to get in on that action, any of this playoff action, do it right now. Head on over to FanDuel.com to get started. Again, that's FanDuel. Play your game. Thanks for making Locked On College Basketball your first listen or watch of the day. Thanks for checking out Locked On Boilermakers as well. They're both all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you never miss an episode, time to make it official. Join the Locked On Everydayer Club, whether it's Boilermakers or college basketball. Get ad-free audio, one-on-one messaging, and so much more. It's all built for you, our most loyal fans. Go to LockedOnCollegeBasketball.supercast.com. That link is down in the show notes. All right, Nick, we've talked about Isaiah Hill, this highly rated freshman coming in, not this season, but next season. You looked ahead and mentioned him, Luke Ertel. And, you mentioned that Isaiah Hill is the only one to jump above Caleb Swanigan in Purdue's recruiting rankings ever. But Luke Ertel is right there, number 3, just behind Caleb. This is crazy, and he's just part of a big class. Let's start there with Luke. What do you like and see in him?
He's tough. I mean, that's the first thing that pops out to me and exactly what you're going to want in a point guard. Matt Painter, he went on a podcast, talked about Luke Ertel and said he has more intestinal fortitude than any other upcoming freshman that he's ever seen in terms of whenever he's been recruiting, which maybe that's coach speak, but it's high praise for a high school player in Luke Ertel, former quarterback. So he definitely has that toughness and it shows on the court. He's a lefty, brought Mount Vernon in Indiana to their first state championship in school history this past year. I'm really high on Luke Ertel. I've been saying I think he is going to be the guy that Braden Smith passes that baton to in terms of being the future point guard of Purdue. Does that mean I think that Luke Ertel is going to be the NCAA assist king? I don't think I would go that far. Braden Smith was pretty special at Purdue, but I do think that Luke Ertel, his ability to play in the high school game consistently puts up 20 points, 10 assists. He's that type of guy. He can get downhill pretty consistently. The jump shot is really good. He competed the 3-point contest at Butler this past when was that? Right after March Madness, I think. And he put up the best round of the entire 3-point contest as a high schooler. So this kid is pretty dang good competing against college kids shooting the ball. He's going to be a special player. So Big Ten teams, Big Ten fans, watch out because Luke Ertel is the next best point guard to show up in West Lafayette. He's going to be fighting against Omer Mayer this year to potentially see if he starts as a freshman. But I really see that battle going either way right now as we go into the summer.
And that's a good sign. Iron sharpens iron. Let's see what these guys can do and bring it together. Now, while Luke is the headliner of this 2026 class, Nick, there's a whole quartet of other dudes that are coming in as well. I love the variability the coaches brought to this with guys from all sorts of different positions, from Jacob Weber to Sinan Juan, who you mentioned earlier, Sonadrup and Rivers Nye, all of these dudes. Let's just talk about some of the other pieces that make up this 2026 class, Nick. What sticks out to you?
Yeah. So first of all, when we talk about the center dynamic, and I kind of threw it out there in terms of Juan coming in 26, and then you got Jacobson, who's probably going to be the starter this year. You look at Jamin Sondrop, he is going to be a guy that's actually going on a mission. So he'll be gone for 2 years.
Gotcha.
And then he won't be back. I guess it would be 2028 would be when Sondrop would come to West Lafayette.
An LDS mission. He's part of the LDS church.
Correct. He comes from Utah. So he's
Nice.
going for a 2-year mission, which would set him up in 2028. Isaiah Hill gets here in 2027. You can kind of see the linear strategy of what the center position is going to look like. I don't want to get too much into him because I'd rather focus on the guys that'll actually be here, but I felt that was something that needs to be mentioned. The first thing that really sticks out to me is that this roster is constructed, or I guess this recruiting class is constructed a lot like the previous era of Purdue basketball. You look at that point guard who's the general out there who can command an offense. I'm not making the comparison, but you see a lot of Braden Smith in terms of the toughness and who he is in Luke Ertel. You have that sharpshooter. I would argue that Jacob Weber is potentially the best shooter in the entire recruiting class. I know that's high praise, but if you watch him at Muir, he truly is that guy. He can get it done in a ton of different ways. He can get it done in the catch and shoot, can get it done in the fast break. Extremely talented. Then you got your center, your 7-foot center. That's kind of a Matt Painter staple right now. Sinan Juan played in the U19 FIBA World Cup for Team China, averaged 5 blocks a game. So another great rim protector. Like we keep reloading with these 7-footers. The one thing for Juan is he might be more of a power forward, is what his coach at Georgetown Prep said. So that's something to look at, but also his ability to get inside is he needs to get a little bit stronger, much like a Jacobson and maybe even an Isaiah Hill as we get into the future. But one of the guys that really sticks out to me, and we're probably not going to talk about, a lot of people aren't going to talk about because you have a Jacob Weber, because you have a Sinan Juan, because you have a Luke Ertel, is Rivers Knight. And the reason people don't talk about Rivers Knight is because he's only a 3-star. But what have we seen Matt Painter do with 3-stars over the years? You know,
turn
like
them into all-stars. That's what you've done.
Exactly. It's just because we have guys like Luke Ertel now. We have guys like Jacob Weber that the 3-stars are getting a little bit overshadowed. But Rivers Knight struggled with some injuries at Muir. His teammate is Jacob Weber. So we have 2 Muir alumni coming in this 2026 recruiting class. It is tough. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but the pipeline continues out of there. I think he could be good. I think he'll probably redshirt going into this year, depending on what the whole 5-for-5 deal is, what the status is with that. That could get kind of complicated, but battled some injuries in high school. I think he can be just as good as the rest of them. So very complete recruiting class, and you can kind of see some similarities in terms of positions, and then what Matt Painter has wanted his previous group to do, and kind of what this 2026 recruiting class is going to be expected to do.
Man, and the positional size that Jacob Weber has me enchanted. I'm very excited to see how he can slide into that and do it, and that'll be great. Now, we've talked about how Purdue doesn't tap into the transfer portal all that much, and that's true again. Although there is one player, Caden Pierce, coming in from Princeton, obviously a smarty guy coming in from the Ivy Leagues. But Nick, as you look at your expectations for Pierce coming in this season, what would that be?
Well, I assume that he's going to be the starter. And Matt Painter always says it's earned, not given. That's kind of the MO at Purdue. But you bring Caden Pierce over for a reason, and it's not to put him on the bench for his last season of college. That's the way I view it personally. You have a former Ivy League Player of the Year, which Pierce was at Princeton. The only concern for me, and this may not necessarily matter as much in today's style of college basketball or whatever you want to say it, but he's listed at 6'6", and that might be a little bit of an issue for Purdue because he also doesn't shoot the ball particularly well from 3, which he's decent, like 34% isn't terrible, but when you have a 6'6" power forward, it's a little bit of a concern. And then you look at who you have the center position. It's Daniel Jacobson, who once again, I'm not necessarily the most confident in when you look at the way that his season ended last year. And it gives me a little bit of a concern in terms of the front court this year. Now, I think Caden Pierce can produce, but how well does he translate his ability from Princeton to Purdue. That's a bit of a leap, in my personal opinion. Also, the fact that he didn't play last year, he could have a little bit of rust. There's just a lot of different question marks, a lot of different variables surrounding Caden Pierce that it's going to be tough for me to sit here and say he's going to produce this. He's going to be an all Big Ten guy. I think he's talented. He wouldn't have won the accolades he did at Princeton if he didn't, but you can start to see where my concerns lie or why there are a little bit of question marks surrounding his fit with this particular young team.
Well, and especially with what we're used to with Purdue's front court and how dynamic it is. And especially recently, coming off of Zach and coming off of TKR and Oscar Clough and all this. And then it's like, I don't know about either of these guys. And so we're going to have to wait and see mode there. Speaking of which, Nick Arvin, the class that just graduated really does seem to be the end of a specific Purdue era. So my question for you is, who's going to be that face of the program now heading into the 26-27 season? And how might that shape up with the starting five and what's it all look like? We'll answer those questions in just a second. Nick, as I think about this upcoming Purdue team, it does feel like the beginning of a new Purdue era. You obviously lose Zach Edey a couple years ago, and then the links to him have now just graduated in the forms of Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer and TKR. And obviously, you mentioned the 5 and 5 just a second ago. We've learned this summer that those guys aren't going to be able to be grandfathered into that, so they're done and gone. And with that trio gone, it just feels like a reset to me. And so obviously there are guys that are still around, but for a long time, whether it was like clearly Zach Edey or clearly Braden Smith, we've known who the face of this team, the heart and soul of this team is. Nick, my direct question to you is, who is that now?
Well, Purdue lost 4 starters this offseason, and all of which were seniors. They return 1 starter in 2026, and that will be the answer to my question. I think undoubtedly it's going to be upcoming junior CJ Cox. And I think he stepped into that role at times last year. He was far and away, in my opinion, Purdue's best defender. You throw him on anybody, you throw him. There were times last year against Michigan where he had to guard Yaxel because we didn't have the size, and he was so versatile. Yeah, and honestly, CJ didn't do a terrible job. Like, he obviously had a few inches. Yaxel had a few inches on CJ, but I mean, he hung his own. So I think CJ as a defender, 100%, and that's something that doesn't show up on the box score that sometimes gets a little bit undervalued. But he locked up Bennett Sturts at times. CJ Cox was great for us last year defensively, but also there were moments where you start to see CJ Cox shine offensively, because when you have Braden Smith, when you have Fletcher Lawyer, there is times where CJ Cox got lost in the shuffle just because of how dynamic offensively those two guys are and had been for 4 years at Purdue. But there were games you look at, even his freshman year against Alabama, there was a time where CJ Cox just saved this team. Last year when Purdue was kind of spiraling to the end of the regular season, CJ Cox made every shot down the end of that game against Northwestern to keep Purdue out of an upset. If he missed one of those shots, they would have lost, but he puts up 27. So there were clutch moments for CJ Cox last year where you started to see that he was going to be the face of this program going forward. But now you look at the way that this roster is constructed, he's going to be that guy. And he was an off-ball, low-volume shooter. I expect that volume to go up. And with my faith in CJ Cox from what I saw last year, I expect him to kind of fit into that role and really not necessarily fill the shoes, because it's going to be tough to fill the shoes that Fletcher Lawyer and just the production that those two guys left, but at least step up in a role and say, hey, this isn't the role I played last year. I might not play the role that a Fletcher Lawyer or Braden Smith played the last 4 years, but I'm still going to be the face of this program and try to accelerate the transition period from the group of the seniors that left going into the next era of Purdue basketball. So it has to be CJ Cox.
I love that answer. Makes a ton of sense. But obviously it can't be just him, Nick. There are other guys that are going to factor into this. You mentioned Omer Mayer earlier in the show. Like, he's somebody that I was so excited about heading into last season. I feel like he never popped consistently at the level that I thought maybe he would, but I'm curious to see like having had a full year in the States, having had a full year, Braden now gone, and you mentioned the kind of positional battle between he and Luke Ertel. I think that is probably going to help them both. Like, what kind of leap does Jack Benter take? And Jakari Harris still around? All of that. Like, how do you see some of those actually, Nick, let me go here. How do you today, as we sit here in the middle of May, see the starting five playing out?
Yeah, this is tough. I could talk all day about this because this is
Bring
kind
it.
of okay. So this is kind of where we've been at with the show as we get into the summer. A lot of roster construction, a lot of talking about starting lineups and whatnot. So at point guard, it's really a two-man race. It's Omer Mayer and then it's Luke Ertel. So there are arguments for both. And if I were to survey the Purdue fan base, I would say 65% of Purdue fans want Omer Mayer to be that guy or think that he will be that guy. The other 35% are really high on Luke Ertel. I don't have an answer to the question, and I think that it would be unfair for me to answer that because that's truly how close of a battle I view that being going into the summer, because we've seen Painter in that same MO of earned, not given. Just because Omer was here last year and played, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be his job to lose. I think that Luke Ertel. Yeah,
go ahead. Keep going. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Okay, I think Luke Ertel is special. I think that he could play and his game could translate early on. I also think that Omer Mayer is a lot better with the ball in his hand, and that could have been some of the reason why the expectations we set on him weren't lived up to last year, playing next to, rather, a Braden Smith. So I see it as 50-50 at point guard. If I had to pick today, I would probably rather see what Luke Ertel could do, but that's just because I've seen him play high school. I think he's a special player, but as you know, high school is much different from the college level. So I would give it to Luke Ertel, but it would be unfair for me as we stand right now to pick one of the two.
And I wouldn't be shocked if we see them on the floor together sometimes. I mean, it's tough because Luke Ertel's height is a little bit of a detriment in that regard, being a shorter guy, but we saw Braden do it pretty capably his whole 4 years as well. I would imagine, Nick, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the other biggest position battle is probably Jack Benter versus Jakari Harris. Is that fair?
It's debatable. So the three spot is by far where it gets the trickiest because some people even want Caden Pierce to slide over to the three. And I don't necessarily
And who would be at the four?
Raleigh Burgess is what the consensus is. It would be a huge lineup with not a ton of shooting, but if you want a lot of size, you could run Caden Pierce at the three, Raleigh Burgess at the four, and then Daniel Jacobson at the five.
And then you've got CJ at the two and one of the other guards at one. Yeah.
Exactly. That's kind of how it fills out. But at the three, it's by far the best debate because you could throw Jakari Harris in there. You could throw a Jack Benter, Antoine West, who redshirt last year, who Braden Smith said is the most electric offensive player he's seen. You could also potentially put Omer and Luke Ertel in a starting lineup and slide CJ Cox, who's very versatile, over to the three spot. I don't like that. I don't like the other one where you slide Caden Pierce over to the three just because I think you're trying to get too fancy. You can plug in Jakari Harris, and I think it works. Now, he really stepped up last year whenever CJ Cox, he hyperextends his knee against Miami. He was able to finish that game out. But I think it's Jakari Harris's job to lose right now. I just said the same thing for Omer Mayer, kind of contradicted myself, but he's going into his junior year, and it's not necessarily his job to lose, but he has to get it this year. Jakari Harris was a guy that was seen as going to be the starter going into his freshman year. And then as the year progressed, it just made more sense for CJ Cox to start, and it worked out better. But Jakari Harris goes into last year. I thought there was a chance he might be able to at least swap in and out with CJ Cox. Who knows what happens, but just feels like every year Jakari Harris kind of underwhelms, or the shot isn't necessarily where we need it to be in order for him to be a high productive member of the basketball team. But this is the best chance Jakari Harris has had. I don't see Jack Benter necessarily slotting in there quite yet. I think he'll be a star for Purdue. I'm pretty confident, or at least he'll be a highly productive player. But I just think that he's going to need a little bit more time to fit that role. Right now, Jakari Harris makes the most sense, and I don't really see anyone else starting there as we sit right now.
Okay. That all makes a lot of sense, Nick. I love it. And it's again, a new crop, a new wave. CJ Cox, the holdover from the starting lineup standpoint, with all three of the seniors that were homegrown Purdue guys, and Oscar Clough obviously out the door as starters. Going to be very fun to see how Coach Painter puts all these pieces together. The returners, the new coming freshman, Caden Pierce is the incoming transfer. Going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, more conversations to have as we see Purdue's schedule unfold and so much more. Nick, great to be together, brother. I'm so grateful for you.
For sure. It was great. I always love to talk Purdue basketball. I always love to talk roster construction. It was a pleasure.
Oh, it's the best. It's so much fun. I'm here for it all off season. All right, you guys, to both the Locked On Boilermakers and Locked On College Basketball audiences, we thank you so much for being here with us. If you haven't subscribed to both shows on YouTube and audio, make sure to go do it right now. Nick's going to be bringing you great content all off season, as will Andy and I on Locked On College Basketball. Stay locked in with us. We're here for you all the time. Everybody else is going on summer hiatus, not at Locked On, baby. We keep on cruising. If you haven't joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord or Everydayer Club, we'd love to see you in there as well. Those links are in the show notes. As always, we got to say, appropriately today, apologies to the Lawyer family and the Sanford family as well. Now, Nick, I had another one where it just Peyton and the whole thing, I got it backwards. Whatever.
Got mixed up.
I just got mixed up. It happens, you know. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to the McBruins, and until tomorrow, peace.